Good to go? Welcome, everyone. I call the December 4th City Council meeting to order. Councilmember Ray has an excused absence this evening. As a reminder, we continue to have a remote aspect to our meetings, and both staff and members of the public may be participating in tonight's meeting remotely via WebEx. The first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I welcome all those who would like to join. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Thank you. The next item is audience comments, and this is the time when members of the public can address council, either in person here in the room or virtually. Those who signed up in advance of the meeting tonight will be called upon first. And if you are joining us virtually and you would like to make comments, just raise your virtual hand or send the host a chat message. If you're on the phone, you can use *3, and if you've joined the computer or smartphone, you can look for the hand icon. And if you're in the room and did not sign up, I will still ask for other speakers before closing this portion of the meeting. City Clerk, has anyone signed up to speak this evening for general audience comments?
Yes.
Thank you. So if you are making comments this evening, please address the whole council regarding matters that are directly related to Issaquah's programs and projects, services, or events. Direct your comments to the whole of council and not individuals. And while this is not a question and answer session, we will contact you to follow up if needed. When you are recognized virtually, please unmute your microphone. If you're in this room, please step up to the lectern in front of council. State your name, address, and relationship to the city, and speak clearly and pause frequently. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes. If you are attending virtually and do not respond after your name or phone number is called, or if your connection is lost unexpectedly, the meeting will need to proceed, and you are encouraged to rejoin the meeting if you are able. Personal attacks, obscene language, derogatory remarks, and disruptive behavior will not be permitted. Public comments, written and verbal, are an important aspect of the public process, and the city takes comments seriously. We thank you for taking the time to address us this evening. City Clerk, can you please identify the first person who has signed up?
Yes, the first person is a virtual attendee, Jessica Clausen.
Welcome, Jessica.
And Jesse, I'm making you a panelist now. You should see the option to unmute and can choose to turn your video on.
I am doing both things. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. My name is Jessica Clausen. My address is 701 Fifth Avenue, Suite 6600, Seattle, Washington. I represent property owners that are interested in item number 5E on your agenda tonight, the Pioneer/Pilot program related to multifamily housing development in Central Issaquah. First, we wanted to thank staff and council and the PPC for all of your thoughts and working on this program. The property owners that we work with like option 2, which is the 10% at 80% affordable housing requirement. I think probably many of you have already heard development is tough right now, and in Central Issaquah, the development that the council and all of the citizens were hoping for in Central Issaquah just hasn't occurred. So the idea behind this Pilot/Pioneer program is to see if reducing some of the cost of developing housing can be reduced by reducing somewhat the affordable housing requirement. I also want to say that one of the recommendations of staff and something that we're also supportive of is implementing MFTE. The 8-year program for the 10% at 80% works very well. And we think it's another way that the city hopefully can get the type of development that it was looking for in the central Issaquah area. So that's all I wanted to say. And we look forward to working with staff and the council in the months ahead as you continue to think about this. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Jessica. City Clerk, who's next?
The next person is Brian Rumberg, but I don't see him in the room nor online, so we'll move to the next person, which is Paul Winterstein.
Welcome, Paul.
Hello, thank you, welcome, or hello, council, mayor. Quick comments about Agenda Bill 8662. It's the Mid-Biennium update. I'm here really to express my gratitude for the inclusion of the $30,000 toward the repair of the Front Street crossing detection equipment. And it's written in there as trolley detection equipment. Of course, it's really something that will detect anything. A pump car, something that has to be put on the rails to help repair a track or something. So, but it's an essential piece of equipment if we were to ever run that program again. And of course, we haven't determined that feasibility, and we will continue to work toward that and look in the next couple months to get I'll be back with an update where we are on that. But there is no, and I don't suspect the city would take any action on the crossing until we had more of an update. At least that's makes sense to me. But anyway, I just want to thank you for that consideration. We couldn't, if the program is ever going to be feasible and run again, we couldn't do it without this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul, and welcome. And is there anyone else signed up to speak this evening?
No.
So I will go to the room and see if we have hands up. Sure. Do you want to come up to the microphone, identify yourself?
My name is Paula Stringer. My address is 14622 Southeast 276 Kent, Washington, 98042. I'm commonly known in Issaquah as the Issaquah wannabe. I volunteer for the Downtown Issaquah Association. My main role is bringing artists and people to our community during some of the programs that we put on. And I'm happy to tell you that this year was a stellar year. We brought so many new artists to this community who also brought their friends and their families and their customers to shop in downtown and eat at downtown restaurants. So I just appreciate the city's support, as always, on this wonderful program, and I love being a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you for the update. Are there others in the room that would like to speak this evening? Come on up.
Hello and good evening. I am Leilani, also with the Downtown Issaquah Association. I live at 200 Newport Way, Southwest, apartment 204 here in Issaquah, over by the Fish Hatchery. And don't know if you recognize me as our children, Mrs. Claus. But in the last, I've only lived here for about a year and 3 months. And in that last year and 3 months, because of the Downtown Issaquah Association, I have been welcomed into the community wholeheartedly and became my persona. And I want to welcome everybody out to the Thursday. I had it on my phone and now I've lost it. To Caroling at the Depot this Thursday for pictures with my 2-month of the year significant other. And then again on the 21st for Make a Music Day put on by Downtown Issaquah Association. It's a nationwide program that we're part of. So come down and get pictures and sing with us. But mostly I just want to thank you for your support of the Downtown Issaquah Association and everything that you help us do and that we partnership with you in. So thank you for helping me feel part of the community that's been so much a part of my life over the last year. So anyway, thank you so much. And come down and say hi, get a candy cane, and see if you're on the nice list.
Thank you for the update.
Thank you.
Checking if anyone online has indicated a desire to speak, because I think we might have a few more speakers in the room, too.
No.
Okay. More speakers in the room? Connie?
Hi, my name's Connie Marsh, and I live on Squawk, and I'm going to talk about a couple of things. I'm going to talk about the expected thing first, but I have written to you about the fees for public information requests. So now I'm channeling Corey, who finds it too painful to come to speak at the council meetings because it's hard, right? And the feedback is not always smashing. So he tiraded for hours after I had gone through and looked at a bunch of old studies. Well, we already paid for those studies. I said, yes, I know, we paid for those studies. Well, why can't you just get those studies? Well, they aren't in the system. Well, then, you mean in the future you would actually have to pay for the studies that we've already paid for, and we paid for the system that is supposed to be tracking those studies and making them available to you? I said, yes, $9. And then he lost it, right? And I can't say I disagree. You know, I like the ability to be able to know that I can access the information that the city provides. I think it's a core value. He is outraged that the community, the citizens, the people who are trying to find the information are like paying 8 times for the same exact thing. And he does not think that that is correct. If we have paid for it several times, we shouldn't have to pay then to look at it, too. I agree. But you already got the rest of it. I'm not going to bore you with all of that. Now, these ladies back here, downtown's been looking great the last few years, very populated, lots of stuff to do. So I actually have to get on board and say, I think Dia's doing great. And I'm not that great at saying that people are doing great, but here you go. I'm saying it there. Now, that does bring me to the visibility of nonprofits. And in the past, the nonprofits have come and they've said to the council what they're spending their money on and what their goals are. And so it's very transparent to the world what to expect for the nonprofits. And the council considers if they should fund them and what's working and what's not as a part of the community benefit that is what nonprofits do. They are supposed to provide things that the city can't pay for unto itself, and then if the city wants to give them some money to elevate that so we get more better without having to do it, they do it. But right now it's invisible. I see here in 2 distant things in the consent agenda are the lease agreements for yet 2 more nonprofits. And I have yet to see a holistic meeting on, you know, what is it with nonprofits? How do we want to use them? We don't have comprehensive plan language that talks about what nonprofits are supposed to do for us. We don't have goals. And I think that's a real lack in the community because the nonprofits are really doing a great job for the community, yet we never really get to see how that interfaces with the city and enjoy how the city supports it, right? So I would encourage the council to ask for such visibility. I'm not a fan of the trolley, just saying. And then I was a little disconcerted to see that we are raising the fees with the inflation. And I went and just read the ordinance. It says, well, we can. We don't have to. And we're rounding up to 5 from 4.6, which we don't have to. We could round down to 4. And when we look at the world of people who are trying to do things, like we want to do an MFTE to allow people to be able to build, but we're going to raise their fees at the same time. It just doesn't seem like we're going the right direction there. So, I mean, that's like putting it in one pocket and taking it out of the other pocket and expecting better results, and I don't understand it. So people are not looking like they are getting what I am saying. And then the Pioneer Project. Central Issaquah plan. We knew it was going to be expensive. We never calculated the costs. Now we're surprised that we are not achieving what we expected when it was going to come in 30 years. And we are looking at basically paying people to come. I don't agree. Let time do it. We don't have to pay anymore. Look at what we could have gotten if we would have waited for Regency up in the Issaquah Highlands. That was supposed to be a multi-level development, and if we had only had the patience, that is what we would have gotten, but we didn't. We caved. So there you go. See how much fun Corey did not have. Thank you.
Thanks.
Perfect.
Thank you, Connie. Looking at a couple more members in the audience to see if anyone wants to do comments. Great. Well, thank you. So we appreciate all of our speakers this evening. We heard a couple of different opinions on the Pioneer Housing Project in Central Issaquah. The comments on the Mid-Biennium update, including certain projects. On the Downtown Issaquah Association Artists update and special holiday event update. We also heard comments on the fee for public information requests, the visibility of nonprofit city relationships, and the linkage of inflation to fees. And I think I covered all of the topics we heard. So we are really grateful for those that came and spoke tonight. As a reminder, written comments can be submitted at any time to the City Council at citycouncil@issaquah.gov. We're going to move to the next item of business, which is the consent calendar. Mayor's remarks. I do not have any remarks on tonight's consent calendar, but I'm going to look down the dais and see if there's any committee chairs who want to have some comments. Not seeing any. The consent calendar was distributed to council in advance, and if authorized, the items on the consent calendar will be considered together and approved by one motion. Have the payables and payroll been reviewed?
They have.
Thanks. I also received a note from our absent council member as well that his review was complete. Does any council member desire to remove any item from the consent calendar and consider it under regular business? Not seeing it. Can I get a motion? Council President?
I move to adopt the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar as presented. Is there any council discussion? Not seeing any indication for discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That carries 6-0. And the next item, we are moving into regular business. We'll start with AB 8662, the 2023-24 Mid-Biennium Budget Adjustment. And the ask before council this evening is to adopt the ordinance. A public hearing on this item was conducted at the November 20th City Council meeting. And tonight, the City Council is requested to take action on the agenda item. There is not a presentation for this item, but Chief Financial Officer Robert Hamoud is here and available for your questions. Does council have any questions on this item? Not seeing, oh, Council President, okay. Okay, let's go for a motion.
I move to adopt ordinance number
3039.
amending the 2023-2024 budget as set forth in ordinance number 2994 and amended in ordinance number 3009 concerning revenues, expenditures, and fund balance for various funds.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Does council have any further discussion? Council President.
Thank you. I just wanted to take a moment and once again say, goodness gracious, our budget process has gotten so efficient, and I feel heard by the administration. I feel like the community's needs are heard. I think for the first time doing a mid-biennium budget, we did a pretty darn good job of not going too deep into things. You know, council members always like to get their hands onto numbers and move things around, but I think we did a really good job. And so I just wanted to send a little note of thank you out to those involved.
Councilmember Hunt?
Thank you. Well, Council President Walsh said it very well. I think that this has been a smooth process, and I will also be supporting this. I did want to flag one item that I had questions about that is a new position for the solid waste program analyst. This is a position that would manage the solid waste franchise contract responsibilities, and it would also help with customer support and troubleshooting, and helping us improve our diversion rates and help us reach our sustainability goals as a community. My hope for this position is that it becomes more of the latter over time and less of the contract management. I have experienced issues with not having my garbage picked up, and I know that we've gotten a lot of, just a lot of concerns from the community, and my hope is that we get that under control, then move towards achieving our other goals and helping people recycle better, et cetera, and answer questions. So I will be supporting this, but I will also say that I'm disappointed that we are having to take this particular step, and I hope that we can address those ongoing customer concerns with our waste hauler first, and then move on to improving the situation rapidly.
Thank you, Councilmember. Are there any other council members that would like to comment before I go to the motion? Not seeing any. The motion before council is to adopt ordinance number 3039, amending the 2023-24 budget as set forth in ordinance number 2994, and amended in ordinance number 3009 concerning revenues, expenditures, and fund balances for various funds. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That carries unanimously, 6-0. Thank you very much, and thank you for the input as well. We're taking note. The next item on regular business this evening is AB 8672, the 2024 property tax levy. And the request before council is to adopt the ordinance. So a public hearing on this item was conducted at the November 20th City Council meeting. And tonight the City Council is requested to take action on the agenda item. Again, there is not a presentation for this item, but staff is still available for questions. Council, do you have any questions on the property tax levy? And can I get a motion?
I move to adopt ordinance number
3040.
levying property taxes for the city of Issaquah for the fiscal year commencing January 1, 2024 on all property, both real and personal, in said city, which is subject to taxation for the purpose of paying sufficient revenue to carry on the services of said city for the ensuing year as required by law.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Is there any council discussion? Not seeing any indication. Therefore, I will just call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. It passes unanimously, 6-0. We'll be moving on to the next item, which is AB 8670, the Transportation Benefit District Councilmanic Sales Tax. A public hearing on this item was conducted at the November 20th City Council meeting, and tonight the City Council is requested to take action on the agenda item. There's, again, no presentation for this item, but staff is available for questions. Council, do you have any questions on this item? Not seeing any. Can I get a motion?
I move to adopt ordinance number
3041.
imposing an additional sales and use tax of 0.1% within the boundaries of the Issaquah Transportation Benefit District for the purpose of financing the costs associated with transportation improvements in the district as authorized by RCW 82.14.0455 and adding a new section 3.04.029 to the Issaquah Municipal Code.
Second.
Thanks. It's been moved and seconded. Again, council, is there any discussion of this item? Council President and Deputy Council President.
Thank you. I think this was one that has a long history. It goes back to the Community Funding Task Force. I always forget what the name of that was, but very well thought out. We've already completed some of the steps recommended in that task force, which was to spend down our general fund balance and to prioritize transportation projects. And so this being the next step of that, again, I think is something that allows us to meet the needs of the community. It brings us in line with a lot of the other communities in the area who are either have already adopted this or are considering adopting a similar funding mechanism. And I think honestly, the communication and feedback that we got from the community was, even business owners, was a little bit of a, okay, kind of makes sense. And so as much as there hasn't been a robust engagement, people have busy lives, and to have people be asked and shrug on it, I think is a good enough response. I also appreciate that this spreads the fees out to all of the users of our roads, since we are a commercial hub. And so I will be supporting this tonight.
Deputy Council President and then Councilmember Hunt.
Thank you. And bear with me, I'm going to repeat some of what's already been said, and also things, of course, that we've gone over many times up here on the dais and via presentation, just because I think it's so important. I am strongly in favor of adopting this new revenue tool for three major reasons that I wanted to highlight. So first, as the Council President said, this proposal has been through a rigorous process of review and evaluation. We had that community task force of residents and business owners and board and commission members and city council members that reviewed previous infrastructure spending and our future capital needs and the community survey data. And they considered a number of options, including scaling back, reprioritizing, maintaining status quo, and ramping up our infrastructure investments. And after 7 months of hard work, this group came together, and their recommendation was clear that in order to better meet the expectations of our residents and our businesses, Issaquah needs a renewed commitment to infrastructure spending, particularly to support transportation projects. So that's the first reason why I'm supporting this. Second, I think we all know that getting around town quickly, safely, easily here in Issaquah is consistently a top community priority. If you look in the budget in our 2022, 2023, 2024 budget, we're currently funding more transportation projects than any other infrastructure category. But given the many safety improvements, legal requirements, regular maintenance associated with infrastructure planning and financing and generally, we're just unable to make the kind of progress that our residents and businesses want to see. So moving forward with this revenue tool will give us the means to do right by them. Third, and this is a line that I got from the National League of Cities Summit that I wanted to pull into this. As local elected leaders, we're in the future business. We have to think not just about the here and now, though there absolutely is a benefit in the near term. Now, I'll also acknowledge that, this doesn't solve all our problems. We're talking about just over around $4 million every 2 years, right? But we're not just talking about just $4 million over 2 years to support Northwest Sammamish Road, to support ITS projects. We're also talking about the impact of that kind of continued investment over 10, 20, 30 years, of course, assuming future councils reauthorize the funding. And moving the needle is always measured in the long term. So I think that this is an important consideration for this proposal. So for those reasons, I'll be voting in favor tonight. I also just want to take a moment to thank our dedicated staff who shepherded this proposal from the very beginning of the community capital finance and community task force. That's it. Especially our deputy city administrator, Andrea Snyder, for all her dedicated work on it. And of course, all the community members who engaged with us on the task force, at council and advisory board meetings, and while we were hosting listening sessions. So thank you, and I'll be voting in favor tonight.
Thank you. Councilmember Hunt?
Thank you. I will also be supporting and wanted to highlight a few things. One is that the communication and the feedback we did receive from the community, I agree with Council President Walsh's characterization. Many people, it seemed, thought that this makes sense, this plan for having this revenue and using it in the way we've put forward, and I think it will have tremendous community benefits. I also had the opportunity to talk with hundreds of people at their doors and in communities over the last several months, and transportation continues to be top of mind for folks in this community, and especially traffic safety, and the near-term improvements will help address some of those long-standing traffic safety priorities that our community has. In the near term, this funding is envisioned to go towards the Sammamish Road non-motorized connection, as well as ITS, Intelligent Transportation System, which I think is something that our community will really benefit from and really we'll see a huge benefit there, public benefit. And then in the future years, Squawk Mountain multimodal improvements, so sidewalks on Squawk where they're needed most, and then also pavement management and concrete maintenance. So those are forward-looking, but in the future business, but also I think it's important that those are in established neighborhoods that we really, over years of looking at our CIP, we have really, those projects that are important projects for established neighborhoods, long-standing, been in the CIP for a long time, haven't had a funding mechanism, that this will be the funding mechanism for those. So it is the future business, but it's also addressing a long-standing historic need in our community for those transportation improvements. I am supportive and thankful that this is before us tonight.
Any other council members wishing to comment this evening on this item? Then I will reread it. Thank you. The motion before council is to adopt ordinance number 3041, imposing an additional sales and use tax of 0.1% within the boundaries of the Issaquah Transportation Benefit District for the purpose of financing the costs associated with transportation improvements in the district as authorized by RCW 82.14.0455 and adding a new section 3.04.029 to the Issaquah Municipal Code. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That passes unanimously. It's a 6-0 vote. Next on our regular business, we're going to move to AB 553, Public Records and Public Records Policy and Fee Schedule. The request before council this evening is to adopt the ordinance and approve the resolution. A public hearing on this item was conducted at the November 6th City Council meeting, and tonight the City Council is requested to take action on the agenda item. I'd like to invite Public Records Analyst Tammy Mueller to make a presentation. Welcome, Tammy.
Thank you. If I can get this to present. Okay, there we are. Thank you. So as the mayor just pointed out, we already presented to you on this topic at the November 6th meeting. There was a public hearing. The purpose was to approve a resolution adopting a public records policy, as well as a public records fee schedule, and then also adopting an ordinance to clean up our municipal code and get rid of those redundant sections of the code that the policy would update and replace. At the November 6th meeting, we heard back the following feedback from you. I won't go into detail because we'll be covering it throughout the presentation. The one item that we won't be having any material on because there just isn't any is item number 2 about whether there's a best practice for when more than one person requests the same body-worn camera footage that needs to be redacted. If 2 people would request that, they would have to pay for it. What's the best practice? And there isn't one yet. This does seem to be a very rare occurrence. We've reached out to our neighboring agencies, and this is something that is still being looked into. It's kind of gotten the attention of more agencies, and we're just still waiting for some feedback on how other agencies handle this. But so far from what we've heard back, there isn't a best practice yet, but it does seem to be a pretty rare occurrence. Regarding the process of what records somebody is able to get in discovery versus the public records request process. I apologize, it's a little small on the screen because there is a lot of content there. I won't go over all of it, but in summary, if there's somebody who is a party to a case where the city is also a party, the city will provide those records either to the prosecutor or to the city attorney or another legal representative of the agency. And then the other parties in that case can have copies of those records as well. If you are not a party to one of those cases and you're interested in those records, or for any other records that you want a copy of, that's when you go to the public records, records request under the Public Records Act. There have been some changes, as you may have noticed in the agenda bill. based off the research that we've done since the last meeting, but I do want to point out that body-worn camera redaction has not changed. That is still called out in the Public Records Act, that parties involved or representatives of the parties involved, as well as some other groups that are specifically called out in the RCW, cannot be charged for the redaction of that body-worn camera footage. However, parties not directly involved, as called out in the RCW, do pay the permanent time of the staff member doing the redaction. And we created an average of 80 cents per minute among the staff who would be performing the redactions, which translates to $48 an hour. And in looking more closely at this, when we started looking at how we had proposed that we not charge the parties directly involved for police reports or collision reports, we found that there was no RCW that would allow us to not charge those fees. And because the Public Records Act is very clear that we cannot discriminate between requesters, this was determined to be discriminating against parties involved versus not involved. And so therefore, we're walking that back, and we are recommending that everybody who needs a copy of a police or collision report that's not in the discovery process would be assessed the $8 per report fee. And the clearance letter remains unchanged. But that said, we do have the low income waiver to talk about as well. So there was a request that we be a little more clear, and I realize this is a very busy table, I apologize, about the ways that somebody can receive records. If I can try to summarize this, it would be that there's no cost for viewing records in person. There's no cost to inspect records. And you'll see there are 3 exceptions, and those are related to non-copying related fees, such as the redaction of the body-worn cameras, the police clearance letter, and then if there's technical expertise needed to prepare or provide records. Usually these are like data requests where somebody's requesting records or data that the city it technically has, but we don't use for anything. But those are still considered public records. Provide examples if that's not clear, I apologize. But those aren't related to copying. Somebody can always get printed records if they choose, or they can get them electronically. We can send them electronically via our GovQA system, or we can send them on a USB drive. The cost of the USB drive would be subject, as well as any mailing fees, as well as any printing fees for the paper and the time spent making those copies. To help make that a little bit more relevant, this example should look a little familiar. We used it last time. It's a request from a resident looking for blueprints for the house that they own. In this example, the set of blueprints is 20 pages. Again, these are very large files. This one in this example is over 1 gigabyte. Under the proposed fees, they could view those records at City Hall for no charge. If we send them electronically via the online portal, they would pay the $9 electronic records transmission fee, and then the 10-cent fee because it's over 1 gigabyte. I will say that there aren't many records that are over 1 gigabyte. Sometimes plan sets are, usually just commercial. If they wanted those printed, because these are very large size papers, it equated out to $81. And then if they wanted those on a USB drive, I'm just taking some liberties here with looking at what a USB drive kind of costs right now, and then estimating the time that it would take a staff member to actually copy those records and prepare the USB drive. I estimated $16, but that would vary depending on how much we can purchase a USB drive for if and when we need it, and then the amount of time that it takes to actually copy those records over, verify that they've copied correctly and they're not corrupted, etc. And if anybody wants anything mailed to them, it would be whatever those fees are for actually making the copy, plus the shipping and handling, the staff time it takes to actually get everything in the envelope, get it packaged up and in the mail. And that staff time is an average of 83 cents per minute among all of the staff who would process public records requests. In the next example and the one after this, these are specific to police records, which is where we were wanting to add a little bit of clarity. In this example, this would be somebody looking for a police case file, either a collision report or a police report. In this example, there would be one collision or police report and then 10 additional records in the file. That could be photos or evidence. It could be a variety of things, additional statements and whatnot. In this example, it totals 20 pages, in addition to the police report or collision report. Again, it costs nothing to view those records at City Hall. If somebody did want a copy online, they would pay the $9 electronic records transmission fee, as well as the $8 fee for the police report or the collision report. The 10 records would be at no additional cost. If they wanted paper copies, it would be $8 for the police report, and then 30 cents times 20 for the additional pages to be printed. And then again, taking some liberties, about $23 for the USB drive. And again, same thing with the mail, fee above plus shipping and handling and staff time. And then it gets a bit more complicated when we're talking about the body-worn camera footage, because we do have to look at the fees charged for an involved party as well as an uninvolved party. One thing to note is that I won't go over every fee because you've kind of got the format down now, but in doing more research in this, we did find that among agencies who use the redaction software and the programs for the body-worn cameras that we will be using, they end up with you don't have to download the video and then upload it to our GovQA system. You can just create a link to the website so that we can share that at no cost to the requester, and they can just download that video if they wish. So again, we wouldn't be making the copy, so we can't charge a fee for it. So in this case, if somebody was an involved party and they were only wanting the body-worn camera footage, we would redact that at no cost, and we would provide that electronically, giving them a hyperlink to that video at no cost. Somebody who was not an involved party, who wants a copy of the video, if this took 10 hours to redact, again, it's $48 an hour, it'd be $480. Under our low-income waiver program, we're only proposing, as you'll see in a moment, that we will be waiving the copy fees, and this is not a copy fee, it's a redaction fee. Okay, so more on the low-income waiver. This is something that would be available to everybody. If they are at or below 50% of the median family income level based on household size, they can qualify for the program. We're requiring that they attest that they meet that income requirement. We will not be verifying that. We'll provide them 20 records at no charge, and that's per public records request, so there's no cap on how many requests they can make in a year. They can be provided in paper or digitally using the GovQA system. And again, this does not apply to non-copy charges, so the clearance letter, the redaction for police body-worn camera footage, and technical expertise would not be waived. So one other thing that was asked of us was specifically why charge the $9 fee. And as we discussed this, we really landed on why charge fees in general, which is to help recover the growing cost of public records requests as much as we were able to. And one thing that I found in discussing this throughout my research with my peer agencies was that an unintended but really good side effect of charging fees for records requests is it actually incentivizes the person making the request to talk with the city, because they're incentivized to reduce what the number of records that they will be receiving, and so they're incentivized to narrow their request. As opposed to what frequently happens is a very broad request is made, and maybe they don't feel comfortable talking to us, or maybe they don't even give us their contact information, and they're just non-responsive, so we end up giving them a lot of stuff that they probably don't want, and they end up getting really frustrated by about the third month. Because of this dialogue that ends up happening, the customer ends up getting better service. They end up getting the records that they want more quickly, and they're able to just get more out of it, and then of course pay fewer dollars in fees, or at least if they are paying more, they know exactly why, and they do understand that yes, those are the records that I want. Also, as a result of some requests being narrowed, staff end up spending less time processing the requests, and so there's a cost savings in terms of that. So regarding what those costs are, some of this was in your presentation on November 6th, but just to summarize, this is according to 2022's numbers, because that's just what we have available right now. Staff time was around, and this was conservatively estimated, around $200,000, and this includes the staff that are dedicated to processing public records requests like myself, as well as other staff that assist throughout the year in finding those records and providing them. Legal review and consultation, that's an exact number, not an estimate, $36,228.
Tammy, is it okay if we take a question?
Oh, absolutely.
Councilmember Hunt, do you want to go ahead?
Slide and the last couple. So the staff time the staff time is the same whether the person goes into the city hall to view the records or not. So on this slide, for example, if everybody went into the city hall to view records, you would still have the same estimate of staff time cost. Is that right?
Potentially.
Okay.
Yes, I suppose there's a lot of variables at play there.
Well,
yes.
I think so.
Yes.
Another, hopefully this helps and doesn't further confuse things. But for when there are two options. People can either get their record through the portal, or they can go into City Hall. Those are the two options that are laid out. If you go into City Hall, there's already been some staff time that went into selecting the record and getting it ready for the person to view it. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Did you say there was something further back on slides or no?
Yeah,
Okay,
I can
great.
go back.
Thanks,
Sure.
Tammy.
Okay. All right.
Madam Mayor, just before we go on,
Sure.
Councilmember Hunt mentioned two ways. There are multiple other ways to get records. You can get paper copies, and we've had the list there. You could get a disk drive with that as well. So there are multiple ways, not just the portal.
Okay, thank you. So then the staff time would be the same for all of those, but then there might be a little bit of additional time for putting in the mail. And I think that was accounted for in the earlier slides. Is that right?
Yeah, so for right now, with no fee schedule in place, if somebody needs something mailed, we cannot charge them for that. If somebody needs a USB drive, we cannot charge them a fee for that. We just have to eat those costs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, thanks, Tammy.
So one thing to point out, though, is with the 2022 costs, this does not take into account any of the body-worn camera technology, because that was just approved tonight, or at least the agreement. And it also does not include one of the new police record staff members. So we will see a little bit of fluctuation in the years to come. And so just noting, obviously, the more time that it takes to process requests, the more staff time it takes. And potentially, there might be requests for additional positions. So in terms of who's making the requests, we've seen this before, but we just wanted to elaborate that most of the requests are from individuals. Narrowly in second place is organizations, some of which might be working on behalf of those individuals. Others are just purely seeking our records and data for their own commercial purposes, which there are ways around that in the Public Records Act, unfortunately, that do allow for that. But throughout this whole analysis of developing the fee schedule, and especially in looking through the possibility of a low-income waiver program, we recognize that we have a variety of requesters, and we've tried to come up with a fee schedule and the waiver program that does not discriminate between groups, so therefore it's all in compliance with the Public Records Act. We tried to make it as transparent as possible, and we wanted a program that facilitates access to public records for anyone seeking them. So in summarizing those three examples that we saw, and I know I've got two part threes because of the involved party versus the uninvolved party. I did want to compare to the state default fee options. These are the fees that were originally developed around 2015-16, based on a City of Seattle cost study at that time, and then further refined during deliberations before it was put into the RCWs. So in the blueprints example, we would charge the $9.10, and under the state default option, it would just be 10 cents. And that's that same 10-cent storage fee. For a police report or collision report, under the low-income waiver program, they pay nothing. Otherwise, it would be $17, again, the $9 plus the $8. Under the state default fee option, this gets a little tricky. It would either be 10 cents because it would be 5 cents for every 4 records, and then we have 10 records in that example. But with the police report and collision report, that is something that's not under the Public Records Act. It is a separate RCW that allows for that charge, and it allows us to charge a reasonable fee, which we've done the cost analysis for to figure out that it's $8.
Question.
So, yes.
So why can we discriminate by involved versus uninvolved party for the body-worn cameras versus the police and collision report if it's both police related?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question, and we asked ourselves that question over and over again, but it really just comes down to the way that the RCWs are written, and that it is very specific in the RCWs that involved parties should be exempt from paying for redaction, and there's no such exemption in any RCW regarding the police reports and police collision reports.
So further on that, have we found any other cities that continue the discriminating practice on police and collision reports by party, uninvolved or versus involved?
Yes. I'm hesitant to answer that.
But thank you.
But it was our I think based off the city's risk appetite, that's something that we didn't want to chance, because it does open us up to possible claims of non-compliance with the Public Records Act.
Thank you.
Councilmember Mertz?
Thanks. A couple questions. So if the average cost per request is roughly $160, and city costs for public records request was about $240,000, so that's roughly 1,500 requests during the course of the year?
Well, it was less than that. So the if I can go back a few slides. The $9 charge for the GovQA portal, if that's what being looked at, was based off of the base cost of the system and not the full $17,000. That includes other types of mechanisms that allow us to do some reporting and redactions and whatnot. So those are optional modules and they weren't taken into the equation. I believe there was around, I want to say around 1,200 requests last year. Might have been a little more.
So my related question is, what do we anticipate the savings would be if we pass this order?
That is hard to quantify. Not entirely sure. I do know that most of the cost savings that cities generally realize is in the requests being narrowed, and then being able to accomplish fulfilling more requests in less time.
Okay, I'm just trying to get a sense of, is this are we going to use this, twice a day, 250 days a year is 500 by 9, is $5,000 out of $250,000? I mean, are we talking about an exceedingly small amount of money, or order of magnitude? Is it like 1% of the budget or 0.1% of the budget? This 250K?
Of just the public records request budget?
No, just
okay.
if we pass this ordinance this evening, the anticipated impact, the costs associated with public records requests. I'm just trying to get a sense of how much this actually moves the needle out of that $250,000 total.
Yeah, Letitia, speak to that.
Councilmember Martz, This is Tisha Geezer, City Clerk. To a large extent, we don't know because, as you saw, there are a lot of avenues for people to get public records. I think where we can get more concrete numbers, if we were to return to you next year, is on the body-worn camera program, because those costs are, well, they're significant and they're a little more fixed, whereas we have individuals making other public records requests. We don't know if this fee schedule is approved, if they'll trend towards coming into City Hall, if they'll trend towards the public records portal. Also, the public records request system is widely variable in the types of requests we get from year to year. We have some predictable patterns, like commercial entities and residents doing work on their homes, and then we have some very unpredictable elements. If there's something I don't know how to say it. If there's some conflict or an area of interest in the city that if folks have interest in, the number of hours spent on these requests and the cost could just vary really significantly. Wanted to make one more comment in response to the question, which is a lot of the staff that are working on these public records requests have other fixed duties, and when they are spent working on responding to these public records requests, it's detracting from some of the other work that they could be doing. In the case of the clerk's office, this means less work on proactive records work, expanding our online portal, doing more proactive, preventative, innovative work in the area of records, instead of querying our over 77 million emails in response to a PRR. So there's some soft costs there that we can't account for. It's a great question, and if the fee schedule is passed, we will definitely be capturing those metrics moving forward.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Timmy.
Thank you. So I was about wrapped up. With this slide, I was just trying to highlight that the state default fees they're pretty nominal and not always transparent, especially with regard to the body-worn camera footage. With our cost study, we were able to come up with that average amount of 80 cents per minute. But just as it's written in the Public Records Act, we are supposed to, without a fee study, we can charge the actual per minute cost of each employee who's doing the redactions. Every employee gets paid a different amount. Every employee is going to have their own speed at which they work, and that makes it very difficult to come up with an estimation. By taking the average approach, we found we can be a lot more transparent, and then that average actually is on the lower side of the costs associated with all the staff who would be doing the redactions. So there are, of course, alternatives. Instead of adopting the fee schedule as proposed, we could adopt the fees as outlined in the Public Records Act, and we would recommend that we do adopt the police body-worn camera fees and possibly the police report and collision report and the clearance letter fees. Or we could, further discuss the approach to the fee schedule, and we could modify that. We could combine fees, we could eliminate fees, just based off the feedback that we received tonight. So with that, we would, the recommendation is to approve the resolution, adopting a public records policy and a public records fee schedule, and adopting the ordinance repealing the conflicting and then redundant sections of the Issaquah Municipal Code. And a bit of a change from the November 6th meeting. We are now recommending that the fees go into effect on February 1st. It will allow us some more time administratively to get just everything up and running.
Thank you, Tammy. There were
you.
a few questions during the presentation. Let's go to Councilmember Hunt.
Thank you. When you were doing the agency comparisons, were there other agencies that charged based on the electronic records software cost?
Yes, there are.
Okay. And so of the neighboring cities that adopted, there were some of them that used that as the basis of their costs that they were charging?
None of our direct neighbors. Most of our direct neighbors are still investigating fee schedules themselves. They're in much the same boat that we are. The City of Kennewick has had success in that model. In particular, they were the pioneer of doing that several years ago, and they've gotten pretty good feedback overall from it. Their deputy city clerk actually told me that, strangely enough, before when they were charging the state default fees, which are very nominal, that people were very upset that they were being charged, a dime, a nickel, a dollar. And when they started charging more, people felt they were getting better service.
Okay. And then a second question, of the agencies that you compared to, did the other ones that have a fee structure, did they have the same sort of thing where it's capped at a certain number and then above that the cost goes down to nominal? So, right, because there's a $9 fee, and then for more records, it's 25 cents per record.
No, that was something that we decided to do ourselves, to create as close to a flat fee as we could, recognizing that we are charging $9 and that might be a lot to people. We looked at how many records are typically provided that are responsive to a request, and for most requests, it's 10 or fewer. So we thought it would be fair to waive the 25 cents per record for those first 10 records, so that the majority of the requests fulfilled would just be a flat $9 fee. And then anything over that would be 25 cents per record. The 25 cents per record was a fee developed looking at the actual cost of the time it takes staff to copy records over into the portal and then release them to the customer.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Duchel?
Thank you. On the low-income waiver, are there other cities that are doing it, or are we the only one? And the other question is, if there are other cities doing it, have they noticed that it has a significant impact? Those would be my questions.
Thank you. Those are very good questions. To my knowledge, we are the only city who has looked into a program such as the low-income waiver for public records fees. That said, other agencies are maybe less risk adverse, and they generally have it either written or unwritten, saying that they will waive fees at their discretion, which again causes the possibility of discriminating. And I do know of one agency that has been sued for that, where they charged one person a fee and they weren't charging others fees, and they were sued and they lost.
Thank you.
Questions on the presentation? Not. Deputy Council President, that's okay. Is somebody prepared to make a motion? Council President?
Thank you. I move to approve resolution number
2023-18.
adopting a public records policy and public records fee schedule and ordering publication of this resolution and the Public Records Act rules, and adopt ordinance number
3042.
repealing Chapter 1.28 Public Records and Chapter 3.60 Charges for Police Department Reports and Services of the Issaquah Municipal Code.
Is there a second? Council President? Deputy, oh, sorry. Been moved and seconded. Council President, you look like you have some comment.
Yeah, I thought I was totally in favor of this as of the last meeting, and I've just come up with so many more questions based on the fact that the police records versus body-worn cameras have changed, and based on the addition of the low-income fee waiver and things like that. So I moved this so that we can talk about it, but I would certainly be in favor if there was an interest in moving this to a committee of the whole or to a particular committee to discuss further. And so I'm interested to see what my other council members have to say.
Thanks. Let's go to Councilmember Hunt.
Thank you. I understand the rationale completely for the body-worn camera redaction fee. That seems like that is going to be a new program to Issaquah. It's very labor-intensive. We expect it to be a lot of work and work that needs to be done well for the privacy of people involved. And so really important work. And completely understand that. I think that rationale is laid out very clearly. I think also that in that case, it's very clear to me that we are recouping costs specifically based on how much we expect it to be for that labor that takes a certain person that has that training. However, and also I understand and completely agree with all of the costs for the printing and that seems very straightforward as well. The one that I do have some thoughts about is the $9, and the reason is you mentioned that one of the rationales for that in particular was that people narrow their that if there's a cost associated, then people would narrow their requests. I don't know that this current fee structure would, in my opinion, just looking forward, I don't know that this would get us that end result because of the way it's structured, such that you have 10 responsive requests for the $9 flat fee, and then the cost goes down. It seems to me like maybe there's a different structure that might better address that. So if you have the one person who wants the one blueprint and it's pretty straightforward, you would provide that. But if you have somebody who asks for a ton of very, very vague, very expansive, that's tons of responsive records, they actually get that. They're in that discount category beyond the first 10 responsive records. So I think that the records themselves are varied in how much time needs to be accounted for, and it seems to me at a high level that this approach doesn't necessarily scale with how much time how complicated each record's request would be, and the cost is really, as shown here, the cost is really based on the staff time. Also, if a person goes into City Hall, they have the same amount of staff time to get that record, or they have a lot of staff time to get that record ready in each case, and then in that case, we aren't recouping the cost. So if we're trying to recoup the staff time costs, like with the body-worn camera, it seems to me that there might be a different fee structure that we should consider. So I understand the rationale for wanting to continue to provide this important public service and do it in an economically sustainable way. I think a lot of this is laid out really clearly. I do question this one particular element of it, if that gets us what we are setting out to do. So that all said, I think maybe another look in a committee would be good, or if there's a different approach. But it seems to me that one particular piece we might benefit from reconsidering.
Thank you. Councilmember Mertz.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'm against all these fees. I think that we live in a state that puts a high premium on transparency. We all get to live that with the various finance laws that we were all subject to when we ran for office and that we continue to be subject to as elected officials. I love it. I love that we are accountable to our residents, but I think that requires to err on the side of transparency, and that also means that we really need to be extremely cautious about putting anything that's perceived as a barrier to the public being able to get information on the work that we do. And you know, if the public wants to be reassured that the police are operating safely and humanely, I want them to get that information. I have not been presented with enough information that this is a problem, nor that the particular problem would be solved by the remedy that we have in front of us this evening. So I'm against it all. Thanks.
Additional comments? Councilmember DuMichel?
I'm generally in favor of this, but particularly around the body camera videos, and it is very expensive to have that work done. I think maybe part of the problem, maybe the reason we do need to have a second touch, is to divide this into two motions, one that has the body cameras in it and the other one, the public records. I have, listened to the commentary we received and also the emails that we received today, and understand that there's still a lot of rationale to be had for why we are planning to do this. But when you look at the cost of doing the body cameras, as I believe Councilmember Hunt said very eloquently, the sensitivity that goes into that in terms of protecting the privacy of the individuals that are in those body camera videos, I think that it's really reasonable to have the public help pay for that, because that's a considerable obligation. And we owe the obligation to our citizens as well for those to protect their privacy. So I could go along with having another look at this, and as I said, possibly breaking this into two different parts that we look at. One, the body camera and video production, and the other, the public records requests. Thank you.
Thanks. Are there any other? Oh, of course.
Sorry. And I did want to thank people for including the low-income waiver fee, and thank you for being bold about that. If we are the only one, that's great. Let's be leaders on that. So I think that's great, but I think there's bigger issues being discussed here, and I think we probably need to address those in a little bit more depth. Thank you.
Any other comments? Councilmember Hunt?
Thank you. It's a procedural question. So I had asked before the meeting if we could break them apart. Currently, they're in, I was thinking more also just for discussion, but currently they are in one ordinance, and so I'm wondering if the administration could give us some options if the timing is such. I understand that we have the February 1st intended deadline in any event, so if you could give us some options as far as if we did want to have another touch or a different option presented that would break these apart, what that could look like procedurally.
Certainly. Thank you, Councilmember Hunt, members of the council. We would propose coming back to a committee of the whole. There is one scheduled on January the 8th. We are very concerned about the body-worn cameras. We are going to be starting a pilot program here in the next several days. We would like to have that resolved, and I think I'm hearing from many members of the council a willingness to agree to some sort of schedule for that. There are other components of this that we also feel very strongly about. The material costs associated with the thumb drives, the copies, the postage, things like that. I think many of you are concerned about staff time, about viewing it in City Hall versus viewing it electronically. So I think we would like to go back. Perhaps there's additional costs that need to be levied for viewing it online, and so we'll go back and sharpen our pencils for that. So thank you for raising those issues. But we would come back on the 8th with perhaps some options so that if there's a desire to send it to a committee or have further discussion on what might be the basic request, we could do that, but also have the ability for you to take action on other pieces of this move forward.
Okay, so if we did want to go forward with that, one of us would have to make a motion to continue this to the January 8th Committee of the Whole. Okay.
Deputy Council President?
Just a quick question. Is there any urgency to the police and collision reports in the clearance letter fee schedule? Or is it just more the body-worn camera?
I think we'd like to come back on the 8th with all the things. Rather than come give you a laundry list off the top of our head of the most urgent, let us come back on the 8th.
Just based on the conversation, I think we've landed in a place where council's ready to make a motion. Is there any particular wording that you would propose for a motion maker, or just to
Refer the item to the January 8th Committee of the Whole would work.
Right. And just in taking notes on all your different comments, I think for the most part, you're getting what you want with that motion. Just looking back at what everybody. Let's hear for a motion. Mr. President? And Councilmember Hunt actually had the microphone up. Oh, okay. There you go.
I
Council
would
President.
move to refer AB 8553, the Public Records Policy and Fee Schedule, to the Committee of the Whole meeting on January 8th.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved to move it to the Committee of the Whole. Councilmember Martz.
Yeah, I'm going to oppose this because, again, against these fees in general, I think the idea that we need to get cost recovery on the oversight of regulatory actions by our city is unpalatable if you start to think about the ramifications of doing that everywhere. This isn't, a permit fee, right, where people are coming in and they're wanting to put a fence up in their backyard or anything like that. This is citizens trying to make sure that we're doing our job and that our staff are doing their job. I'm proud of the IPD. I'm eager to get this information out in people's hands, and the idea that we're going to try to get cost recovery on, as I said, evidence that we're doing our job is, I think, has unsavory conclusions if you follow it to its natural conclusions. Thank you.
Any other comments on the motion? So the motion was to move this item to the January 8th Committee of the Whole. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
The motion carries 5-1. We'll move on to the next item, which is ID 1545, Central Issaquah Pioneer Program. And the City Council is being asked to provide some direction this evening on this item. Typically, these policy questions would be considered at a Committee of the Whole meeting, but due to some timing considerations, it was scheduled for tonight's regular meeting. And I'd like to invite Jen Davis-Hayes, our Economic Development Manager, to make a presentation. Welcome, Jen.
Thank you. And I'm having some problem getting into WebEx, so Tisha is going to be my Vanna for the presentation. Thank you very much, Tisha. Again, my name is Jen Davis-Hayes, Economic Development Manager for the City of Issaquah, and tonight we're talking about the Pioneer Program. And so we most recently were at the Planning Policy Commission and Economic Vitality Commission joint meeting to get some input on this, and here to share that input and to get additional input from City Council. Yep. And so the input we're going to be looking on is the program limits, and so this can be by number of units, number of projects, a timeline, or location, and so we'll ask for specific input around that. And then the second area of input will be around affordability options. So we have two options that we work very closely with Arch and developers to present, and again, we'll talk about that more later. Sorry, Tisha. The housing, so we always talk about where this falls, this program falls on the housing continuum. And so this is something that is more about market rate development happening, and there is some affordability. So we're in this area of the housing continuum. And so this journey began in April's Committee of the Whole when a public commenter requested to utilize the Pioneer Program in the Central Issaquah Plan, which was passed in 2012. Council wanted to explore it more. We came back at the Committee of the Whole in May and then had several conversations in our committee, the Services, Safety, and Parks Committee. And throughout this time, we've been working very closely with Arch to develop this program, look at what other cities have done, and also gathered developer input. As Mayor Pauley mentioned, we're here tonight because normally a code change would go to the Planning, Development, and Environment Committee, but since we've been at one committee, we're here to kind of talk to you all at one time. So we're not asking for any action tonight, but again, for input. Okay, so really, what exactly is a Pioneer Program? So as I mentioned, it is to spur development in the Central Issaquah specific areas, and it's meant to help balance the risk for the first in market. So we can use changes in regulations, we can use incentives, And again, a lot of earlier conversations we've had, this was connected with the affordable housing conversation, but this is really about, the next slide talks about the goals, is to spur development in areas where our jobs, our amenities, our transit currently exist. We're looking to create new neighborhoods in our central Issaquah urban core and regional growth center area. And most importantly, we want to do this so we save our historic downtown and our forwarded hillsides from redevelopment, and that's what the Central Issaquah Plan Vision really is about. So many of you may know in your own industry when something that's first in market spurs others to come in behind them, right? So there's a risk to that. So that's again what the Pioneer Program will address. So the general outline of the Pioneer Program and has been scaled back to these items. So we originally, in May's conversation, we had some different ideas about providing additional sustainability and additional connections to the natural environment. After looking at more analysis, we really discovered that it would be a disincentive to the program. So if we're really trying to create a program that's going to encourage the first projects in an area to happen, adding more requirements was not the way to go. So we'll talk again about these elements, and we can go to the first one. So reminder, we're not looking to change development standards for all of projects that come into the city from here on out. But it is going to be, again, for the first, what? Is it the first few projects? Is it the first so many units? And we want to also get your input on proposed locations. So we're looking right now at the urban core and the mixed use areas. So urban core is basically going to be on either side of I-90 from Tibbetts Valley Park north to Costco area, and mixed use area includes Summit Gilman and East Lake Sammamish Parkway. Next. So as we talked to the Planning Policy Commission and EVC about this, they like the idea of limiting by number of projects versus units itself, because they felt that it fit better for, well, what if a project has 333 units and we only allow 300 units? So looking at that, but one thing they did have a discussion about is considering minimum maximum numbers for those projects. So minimum that it's large enough that you're going to spur that that next project. So having a project of 15 units may not actually spur because it didn't prove in the market. But they also talked about having a mega project come in, and I'm just going to make a number, 2,000 units. That would one may open up the city to a little bit more of 2,000 units that aren't meeting the affordable housing requirements for the typical development, multifamily tax exemption, all those negative impacts that maybe we're not ready for. So there was some conversation about that was suggested. And again, I should say again, the PPC and EVC commissions were not asked to provide a recommendation yet. We'll be back to them in January for that. And then regarding looking at a time or a deadline date, I think really they lean more towards looking at the number of units because they just don't know when, what's a good date to put on there. And so knowing that we can come back and look at this in 2 years if nothing has happened, but going through this work and not knowing when the market will change or if something's through the process and it doesn't get to that critical point before the made up deadline, that doesn't make sense. And then for geography area, they really, they recognize that different properties within central Issaquah have a different, I won't say availability, but potential for redevelopment, right? So it was really, they didn't have a strong opinion about where, but they said that, providing it in those two mixed zones allows the flexibility to see something happen more widely and to, again, create these different neighborhood areas. Tisha, thank you. So the next, and I apologize. The next area, again, is we're going to be looking at, these two are conjoined. So we're not looking at them separately, but the affordable housing requirements with the multifamily tax exemption. So as many of you know, that we as a city don't have very many financial incentives to provide developers, businesses, such, but the multifamily tax exemption is one of those projects. So the state does allow us to look at an 8-year, 12-year, or 20-year, depending on number of units and affordability levels and home ownership. So as we did the analysis, the percentage of units that would be required are not going to be eligible for the 12-year, so we're recommending the 8-year. The 8-year does not, by the state, require you have affordable housing and have affordable housing for the length of the project. We are going to put that on that requirement. So units that are created in the Pioneer program would still have the lifetime affordability covenants that would be created under a regular development project, and again would have an 8-year MFT. Next. So we're going to get into a little bit more details about zoning and what's currently required. So in these two zones, there are two ways that they can provide affordable housing. One is the inclusionary zoning that is required, and then one is the development bonus, which is optional. So we'll go ahead and jump into, we're just going to show you the slide. You don't need to memorize numbers, but this is what's currently required for under the current code. So because we want to make sure this is for the urban core. So right now the developer has a choice. Again, in the inclusionary, they're required to do that. So they have to select between one of these two options to provide affordable housing. In addition, the development bonus program, so you can build up to 60 feet or a 3.0 FAR, which is floor area ratio. And if you want to go higher, which a lot of the projects in this area want to and have to because of the water table not being able to build too far down with structured parking, you must use our development bonus program, which has choices. So there's a certain portion that you have to provide of 80% area median income housing, and then you can choose to pay a fee to provide more affordable housing or to provide some open space. And it's all depending on how many square feet that you provide in this development bonus area. So it's kind of hard to say exactly because the footprint of the building really depends on what you have to provide here. But this is what's currently required. And then we are looking at, so again, we are looking at two options. One, and again, both of these options have been analyzed by Arch, gotten feedback from developers. So the option one is looking at 8% of the units have to be at 60% AMI. And again, both of these options have the 8-year multifamily tax exemption. And you heard tonight from the public commenter, they prefer the option 2, which is the 10% at 80% AMI. One of the things I wanted to mention in the past slide, I forgot, was that the option 1 or 2 means that they can build above the base height, so the 60 feet or the 3.0 FAR. So they're not required. So this is what is required. So we will see higher buildings, not going to be as tall as potentially like the Costco headquarters, because they'll unlikely to be building in the steel construction type, but we will see taller buildings happening in the central Issaquah area, which again is where we want to see that density. Okay, next. Going fast. So those percentages are percentages. What does that mean? So here's an example of a 300 unit development. So the first column on the left is what it would currently be. And so the orange is that 60% AMI, the green is 80% AMI, and then the blue, which is a little hard to tell, is the 50% AMI. So option 1, again, that 8%, you're looking at 24 units at 60% AMI. Option 2, you're looking at 30 units, so it's a difference of 6 units. So when you're really talking about a development of the size we will probably see, it's not like we're talking 5 units and 100 units difference. We're talking about 6 units in this example. And so the one thing I did want to point out with the no change, so those 50%.
Jen, I think you've got a question on the slide from Councilmember Martins.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I do. Do we know what we think market rate is in terms of AMI?
So I don't have yes, I have that information. I don't have that slide here in this. So.
But is it like 120% of
Oh.
AMI or 150%
Oh, that's what you're
of
saying,
AMI?
sorry. So I have heard both 100 and 120, and I think it is more towards 120. Yeah,
All right.
yeah. Sorry, got a little twisted there about. So I was going to say that the blue, the 50% AMI that's in this no change, that is not required. So that's like assuming they chose that option. So that may never actually occur, which we've heard a lot of developers say that it's really challenging to build that. So they would actually pay a fee in lieu of instead of providing that. So just a FYI with that. Okay. Next, so the pros and cons, like how do we look at these, each of these options, do provide affordable housing, but again, we are looking really to try to get some development to happen so that we can get that more housing, or we have zero housing right now in the urban core, into these areas that have these amenities. So, looking at, does this improve housing feasibility? Option 1 and 2, we've heard from developers it does. The no change, again, we saw in a diversity of housing report that there's some calibration of our codes that we need to look at for that. Again, 50% AMI, we're not looking at getting that as part of these two options. And it could be that the developer chooses to do that, but it's not a guarantee in the no change. Looking at workforce housing, which King County puts 60 and 80% together, so it's hard to kind of split out between those, but that would be provided in all these options. And we do know that there's a higher need as you go down into more affordable units. So like a 60% AMI unit is needed. There's more need for that than an 70% or an 80% AMI right now, just because of what the market has provided on its own. All of these will, increase the diversity of housing. Well, we have zero housing there, but it does provide some new options in the area. And then Arch's analysis about the value of obviously thinking about the more affordable housing is more valuable. So, kind of ranking these in order, having that 60% AMI is a good value for us, because again, that's needed more for some of our entry-level employees. So the PPC and EVC, this is a very interesting conversation because it was a challenge to coalesce around a general agreement about the affordability levels. They felt they didn't have enough information about about the data and information to make an informed choice. So we're going to bring them some more information about what careers and what jobs make what levels of AMI. So hopefully they'll be able to better understand that. But really, they did support the reduction of affordability to spur the development, which is the Pioneer Program's goal. And they even some of them voiced an opinion to select the option that would better ensure the redevelopment. So like, which one's going to make this more likely? And that's not every one, but that's, some of the comments. Regarding the MFTE, they saw that this was something that 55 cities across the state used, thought it was valuable. Some of them were, brought up about the concern about the
foregoing. You get a question on this?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm just going.
Right, Michelle?
Yes.
Yeah, I actually was going to ask a question about the previous
we can
slide,
go back.
if that's okay.
Yes.
So that last column, the arch analysis and value to the city, and the first one is medium, and the second one is low, and the third one is high. So what prompted them to put a low marking on that option 2? And is that simply the amount? Is that the number?
We're ranking them 1, 2, 3. So it's actually not that it's low. If it would compare it to 40 options, it may not be that that's a low, but we were ranking them 1, 2, 3. So a lot of when they do their analysis looks at when you increase zoning, what's the most value. So this was a little fitting a round hole in a square peg a little bit for that analysis.
So do you mean that one of those options had to be the low? Is that what you mean when you say you're doing high, medium, and low?
Yes.
Oh.
One, two,
oh,
three. Yes, sorry.
Okay, so
Yes.
one of those had to be low.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hunt?
Thank you. I had a question on the same thing, which was, did Arch actually, was this your interpretation of that Arch letter that's in our packet?
Yeah, and we've had lots of conversations about it. So when we're looking at how to compare these, again, this is a really challenging thing because we all want the affordable piece of it, and putting a value on an 80% family versus a 60% family is, housing is challenging. So this is that way to kind of define that a little bit easier on a chart and to kind of think about that. So,
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Council President?
Quick clarifying question. So, but in terms of need, option 2 would be relatively low in terms of value, right? I thought when Arch came to us, they showed us the little spectrum of AMI, and it was more 60 to 80% was the greater need than 80.
yeah, so that does include 80. So that's the hard part, is
Oh,
the
I see.
60, I know, yeah, and that's in your packet as well, that chart. So the 60 to 80% it's like from King County, so it's not split up. We can't split it between 60 and 80. So,
We can only guess.
and what Arch has said, so Lindsay Masters has said, you can assume, because as you go down the, to the 50%, 30 to 50, there's much bigger need. And so you can assume that the 60 is going to be more need than the 80. And again, just knowing what we know, what has been built here, that it makes sense.
Councilmember Mertz?
And I have a question about the next slide.
Okay.
MFTE.
Yes.
Services, Safety, and Parks had a question about school district funding and MFTE. Can you speak to that and the concern that we had about basically our speaking to district revenues by MFTE ordinance?
Yeah, so I know that we're going to talk as a tool for MFTE more next year when our long-range planning folks are going to look at it as a tool potentially broader than the Pioneer program. So the MFTE, when you have foregone revenue, it's not just for the city, it's for all the property tax collectors. And so while the school district would not receive for the 8 years that increased property tax bill value, they would still receive impact fees. They would receive any other sales tax or other kind of contributions they do get from there. And then we actually have a newly elected, soon-to-be school board member on the Economic Vitality Commission, and reminded us that they also get a per head capita. So if family moves in there, they're still receiving that per head contribution for their operations. So
is the net that it's not that large of a problem for them?
I don't know that I would say that, and I don't know. We haven't done analysis, and that's where I'm saying, like, next year we're gonna really dive in to show what that means, because I think the same thing for the city of us getting construction sales tax and permitting fees for this foregone revenue. What is that delta then? I don't want to pretend that it's okay or it's drastic. I don't really know because we haven't done the analysis.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jen.
Yeah, this is a limited, the MFT would be limited in this case, and so that's why we felt comfortable moving forward with it. And the value of having it to actually allow affordable housing, which seems to be in all the other cities, is like it happens because of the MFTE. So the commissioners were definitely, worried about the foregone revenue and thinking about the city's infrastructure. And again, we did share with them that, again, there's impact fees, there's other avenues for that. But that is something, I think, that, again, that went into that, making sure we don't have a Pioneer project that's 2,000 units and for all this revenue that's foregone for the city is not what we expected. So we are here tonight. Next, we would go to have a public hearing at PPC in January. Come back. So actually, we'd be coming to the Planning Development Environment Committee in February, and then back to full council in March, the beginning of March, if everything flows the way that we can bring you information. And just today, I was talking to Arch. We have a meeting every 2 weeks to talk about this and the the inclusive housing and investment pool. And so the marketing is, we're already started, making lists of developments and talking about property owners for both programs to kind of, get the interest out there. And so we're going to be in January creating a robust marketing program for this and really talking to developers and property owners about the potential for this. So we want people to know about it. So besides those that are aware of it. So the last two slides are the input requested, and I'll take any questions.
Great. So no decisions this evening, no formal action, but you are all asked to provide feedback on, I have a couple notes here, the approach to limit the program, number of units, number of projects or timeline, urban core and or mixed use CI zones in central Issaquah, and secondly, adjustments to affordability requirements and the provision of financial incentives. You've heard about option 1 and option 2. So I've got a few microphones up. I didn't see who was first. I'll go with Councilmember Hunt.
I have a question.
Oh, okay, let's do
Start with a
questions.
question.
Sorry, forgot about questions.
Just one question about, so the options that you would like feedback on, did you discuss with any of the boards, or has it come up about giving those options, like giving multiple options to developers to choose
Oh, for them to
from?
choose? We didn't. That could be one of the things we proceed with, though.
Okay, thank you.
Mertz.
So, I want to gently poke at the underlying narrative that there's anything wrong that we have to fix here. So we had so much development in 2016 that we put a moratorium in place. And we had a moratorium in place for 2 years because housing was growing like rabbits in our valley. And during that time, Atlas went live, and then we lifted the moratorium in 2018. Vail went live in 2019, and Westridge Townhomes went live in 2019. And then in 2020, we had COVID. And the state of emergency for COVID was only lifted in September of last year. And so I think it is far too early for us to conclude that there is anything wrong with the options that we have in front of us, and that the policies that we have in place that Arch supports, that there's anything wrong with them. And the time is just not right to think about relaxing that. Things were going like gangbusters for many years. This idea that somehow we've had 10 years of like restrained development just isn't borne out by the fact. And so I would like us to keep the standards that we have in place currently. If we want to look at MFTE, that's fine. But the value of an 80% AMI is no more than half the value of a 60% AMI, right? And possibly even less than that. So it's really valuable to us to be able to offer housing to folks at a lower income level. And I don't want to walk away from that or the numbers when we're just so recently out of COVID that I just don't think we can conclude that we need to take drastic action. Thank you.
Council President?
I didn't realize I was next, sorry. I have to say I agree with Councilmember Mertz. I am really interested in having the full conversation on MFTE, and really would be very concerned about adopting something on a pioneer program basis when we could make adjustments to not only MFTE, but also other things such as parking and impervious surface, and the other things that the housing report that we received called out to say, this is why you're not getting this development. I really want to solve those problems, and I would be concerned if we have a developer who says, you don't have to solve those problems, you just have to do these things, and it'll make it work. That doesn't make sense to me. So I'd like to better understand that option. If we are going to go through with this, based on my work on the Affordable Housing Committee of King County, strongly prefer the 60% AMI. the data not only for Issaquah, but regionally, so much more need at the lower levels. And looking at the information that Arch provided, for a family of 4, the 80% AMI is 117,000. For 60%, it's 88,000. That's a very big difference. And I think it's something we really need to take into account because the 100% has gone up so much that there is much more of a stark difference between those. And then, again, if we're going forward with this, I am very interested in seeing mixed use development. So I would be interested in 2 projects per zone so that we can prove out that concept as well. So those are kind of my thoughts. I'd really like to address the MFTE and the information provided by the report on what's holding back housing rather than responding to what a developer said would make their project pencil out.
That's 2 of 6. Who's next? Deputy Council President and then Councilmember Hunt.
I don't know, I disagree. I see this as a tool to complement other policy changes that will have more of a long-term impact. I also don't think it seems right to ignore the document or to ignore the Central Issaquah Plan, which envisioned this program from the start. And when was Central Issaquah Plan made? 2012? 2014? 2012? Yeah, I don't know. Those number of apartments, even given the moratorium and COVID, does not seem like a lot to me personally. So I think that pursuing this program is a good tool in the tool chest for getting the kind of vision that we want from the Central Issaquah Plan. I agree with some of the guardrails that Economic Vitality Commission and Planning Policy Commission were talking about in terms of limiting by numbers and then setting those minimum and maximums too. I don't necessarily know what that appropriate number would be, so I would look for some guidance there. And then also, I do think if we're going, we are giving up, this is an expense to the city, we're giving up revenue. So if we're doing that, it would make more sense in my mind to get the more deeply affordable housing, the 60% AMI. Especially when it's like for 300 units, it was a difference of 6 total units. So yeah, again, I see this as a complementary to our other work that we're doing. And I'd like to see us move forward with it. And I'd like to see them come back to us again with a more formal recommendation for action.
I think Councilmember Hunt was next.
Thank you. So is this going to the Planning, Development, and Environment Committee as well, or is this?
It will be after. If we go to Planning Policy Committee for the public hearing, then we'd be back to PD. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then currently it would be, it's considered for council adoption in February 2024?
Yeah, we updated that since then, so it's actually beginning of March.
Beginning of March, okay. Mm-hmm. Well, so one thing I just wanted to flag for my fellow council members is if you have questions now or between now and then for the committee to chew on, mm-hmm. that would be helpful because it seems like there's a lot of different opinions here, and so that would help us structure and make sure that we address any questions, like big questions that other council members have that aren't on that committee. So I was thinking of this in reading the materials, that the thing that stood out for me in the Arch report wasn't so much that they thought one thing would be higher benefit to the city. It was that their conclusion was really none of this guarantees that you will get affordable housing. That was their headline and the thing that they kind of kept going back to. And so for me, it seems like, yes, one goal of the program, as it's stated in our materials, is to get this kind of housing, which we know that our community needs, affordable housing. But also, it seems to me like it's potentially an opportunity to prove out and to see what the market would actually go for, which is why I asked about, was it considered that we might provide a couple options for developers to see which one they would go for, any of which would provide affordability, which we need. So that was more what I was thinking. Potentially this could be a useful exercise in providing options and then getting actual information back about what would be built. We also recently in Planning, Development, and Environment Committee looked at the work plan over the next several years, and for an entire year, there's envisions that the Community Development Department would be looking at a whole suite of things, including MFTE, parking, other development regulations, the affordability levels, and sort of all of those levers together, as well as the missing middle requirements from the state. And so just all of those different things that we could look at and all of the different levers. And so that's a big body of work, but that is expected to take a year from 2024 into middle of 2025, I believe. And I was thinking this could be some both getting started on that work earlier, but also that information could feed into those conversations while we look at the myriad combinations of all of those different levers that are possible. So I think that's still where I am, and so I would be more inclined to use this not just to try to get affordable housing, to get the kind of development that was envisioned in the Central Issaquah Plan, get that started, but also to get information for us about this much bigger conversation about the future.
Did you have any comments on the affordability piece? Did you speak to that?
So I didn't directly speak to it. I think I kind of spoke around the edges. I think it would be, I understand that the need is more at those lower affordability levels, but I also think we have need at all levels, including 120% AMI. And so I would therefore, and then that combines with thinking maybe we can use this to get more information about everything, would be to have both as options for the developer, to give them a couple options with trade-offs. That's where I am right now.
Councilmember DiMichele?
Thanks. Jen, can you go back to the slide that showed the 3 bars with the affordable housing? Councilmember Hunt said a lot of what I want to say, but I think this illustrates, you look at those 3 bars, and we're not getting a lot of affordable housing with any of them. And so I think we have to go back to what was the whole Central Issaquah Plan about. And the Central Issaquah Plan is to develop more density so that we are getting ourselves prepared for the light rail station and for transit and for other things. And let me look. I have to get my glasses here. Between option 2 and option 1 and option 2, we're looking at the difference between 6 units. And so I really think that we, then we have to think about the 276 or 270 other units, which are really the reason that we're talking about this Pioneer project. We want to bring more density to that area, and at this point we haven't had any density coming in. So this is an incentive program to introduce, like you said, proof of concept that developments there would work. In terms of the 60 or 50 or whatever the AMI is, I agree that we need 60, but we also need 30. I mean, that's really lacking. And then we hear from the school district and Swedish and the fire district and so on that they have a hard time getting employees because they have to commute so far because they can't afford anything here. So that 80% is also important, and it's really something that's essential to our economic development, but also the mix of people who are coming into our community and being in those service jobs. Can they live in Issaquah? A lot of them can't live here. So, so I am willing to go with the 80. I do have the same question. Could we offer a blend or options for 60 to 80 or something like that, so that developers would have that option? So, and then to echo Councilmember Hall, we learned a lot at the National League of Cities, and I got to sit in on a presentation from Tempe, Arizona, about a number of things that they had done, and also, again, kind of a proof of concept that they did in the central area of their city. And they worked with their developers, and the developers said, we have to make this pencil out. We hear that over and over again. We have to make that pencil out. And so they worked with their developers to see what were they able to achieve, and they ended up with a development of about 300 units right in central downtown Tempe, serving seniors. Again, another housing option that we really need, with small little units, and then they were able to make a lot more of those affordable. So there's a lot in the mix, it seems to me. But so generally, to wrap up, I support the idea, the concept of the Pioneer project, because I think that we haven't achieved our goals in the central plan, and we need to start to incentivize those. And so I would be supportive of, let's try something here, so, and start working towards that vision that we have for the type of housing and development we want in that area. Thanks.
I'm going to go to Councilmember Joe before I come back to Council President.
Thank you. Councilmember DiMichele, we should try something, I think, is one of the central messages there. The Regional Affordable Housing Dashboard for King County was put out recently, and it can be found on the King County website. Looking at Issaquah, you can break it down by jurisdiction. And in 2019, we built 11 units, 31 to 50% AMI. In 2020, we built 0 units. In 2021, we built 0 units. I think that if we look at the chart that's up there right now, the way we get affordable units is if we increase the general supply and build more housing overall. Whether it's a 10% requirement like Seattle puts on, or other requirements that we're contemplating, we don't get the affordable housing units unless we build, a wide variety of units at other missing middle points on the spectrum. And so I'm in favor of us continuing to study this, take it back to our commissions and boards that look at this. If you look at the the burden of housing on people here in the city, that's also on there. And in the 50 to 80% AMI category, we have 26% of the people that are severely cost burdened in Issaquah. 40% are cost burdened, which means that they pay more than 33 or 35% of their gross income per month on housing. Those are people that live in our community right now in Issaquah. And so I don't want to go through all the numbers, but the bottom line, as I'm thinking about this, is we need to increase the general supply of housing in order to get the affordable housing numbers up. Building 0 is not an option. Our citizens are telling us we need more housing in our city. And we're making these decisions not for my kids that are 17 and 14 now. These units will not be built by the time they want to come back after graduating from college. We're talking about maybe my grandkids, if I have grandkids, in the future. So we have a responsibility from where I sit that we continue to look out to the future and try to find solutions for things that are coming. We see that the problem is here now, but we also need to think about the future. So I'm in favor of studying this more, and I would hope that we would continue this pathway to find out if the Pioneer project can be a kind of a springboard for other affordable housing in the city, but we need a proof of concept. Thank you.
So we're going to go for round two. Council President, followed by Councilmember Mertz.
Thank you. I absolutely agree that we need more housing in the central Issaquah area. That was what it was designed for, and providing density there around transit is absolutely where we should be going. My problem is the concept of providing an MFTE that will cost the city multiple millions of dollars worth of benefit per project to get that, like, if we're just talking about the 200 plus units of market rate, that's a problem for me. I think if we're looking to make a development in this area cost effective, I would much rather look at other regulatory options that we have, such as parking and the impervious surface and FAR and any of those other things that are driving up the cost of a project, rather than starting out with giving away money. I think the reason that we look at an MFT program is to get affordable housing. And so if we're trying to look at this Pioneer project as, hey, there are two benefits from it, like, I agree, but I don't think the benefit of establishing new market rate housing in this area is worthy of us giving up revenue, which is what an MFT program is. So I really want to make sure that we really recognize that the MFT program, if you're looking at 300 units and you're talking about, I believe the memo said they would gain a benefit of $12.5 or $14.5 million. Now, some of that was because they wouldn't have to develop other affordable housing. So I'm not sure how much of that is really reduced revenue for us, but that's a pretty expensive price just because we want this to happen in this area. And so that's why I really want us to look at the overall costs and the MFT stuff at the same time, so that we're not just throwing our money when we could be adjusting other levers that would make projects pencil out.
Thank you. Councilmember Mertz.
So I don't believe that residents are telling us to build more housing. I believe residents are telling us we built too much market rate housing and we didn't recover the costs of the infrastructure associated with that market rate housing. So we have traffic and an ability to pay for things that will help manage that traffic. We built tons and tons and tons of housing in the valley already. That's why we have low targets going forward, because we blew out our numbers over the last 20 years. And thanks to our friends in Olympia, we've thrown open the barn door, and now people can build all sorts of condos and duplexes up on the hillsides, so we'll get even more market rate that we will be unable to control. So I don't want more market rate, but I'm willing to put up with more market rate if we can get the workforce housing that we so desperately need. I recognize we have quite differences of opinion on this dais on the subject of workforce or market rate housing and its importance, but I think what's critical to know here is that we, over the last 20 years, have built an incredible amount of market rate housing in this town. I'm proud of what we did while we did it, but we are now choking on all the housing that we put in without the infrastructure to support that housing. So I want to be really careful, and I want to make sure, and I'm all for doing this pilot project, but we have to know that we're going to get the workforce housing for which we're willing to pay the price of more market rate housing.
Any other second round comments? Deputy Council President?
Just a few questions, actually. When this goes back to its commission, right? Or even at committee, are there any like timely examples of cities who have adopted MFTEs and project is finished and there's kind of a better understanding of actual lost revenue over time that can be studied or looked at, or is it still kind of early?
Yeah, well, I know that when Shoreline was adopting their MFTE, they did an analysis, and so I could, show that example, and I can look at if Bellevue or some other city has that analysis, because all of them have done, a fuller analysis when they adopted MFTE, and the again, the when you were looking at those numbers with Arch, it wasn't all income or value to the developer, but it was kind of balancing all those different changes. So we can get some more information on MFTE.
I think that would be helpful to kind of get a visualization of a few examples of like what you're actually getting for the cost, because it is a cost. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I think there's some complicatedness with how the
no
tax
doubt.
shift happens, and the 1% plus construction and all that stuff. So it is definitely a guesstimate, but a better guesstimate than just me up here saying 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
My other question was for Councilmember Hunt, if that's okay. So your part of your feedback was around providing options. I'm not sure if I followed. Could you expand on that?
Yeah, so the goal of the Pioneer program as stated is to get a starting project or a couple projects that meet the vision set out in the Central Issaquah plan, where we aren't currently getting residential development at that density that supports walkability, et cetera. I think that potentially another use of this program would be to see what gets built under the Pioneer program, to use that as a proving examples that we could use for the next big comprehensive study over the 2024 to 2025 year long, where we look at all the different levers. So right now we have developers who say, for example, to us that a certain, as was said today, there's a certain level of affordability that's more likely to pencil for them. So I think just getting that information about what actually gets built on the ground could feed into our conversation, the bigger conversation, if we give them options, because then they'll have options to choose from. We'll see what gets built. And I'm not the expert on that, but then we would have some actual concrete examples of how they built it. So that's why I was thinking there's a potential benefit to, and additionally, as has been said by some colleagues, I don't think there's that much of a difference here from my perspective in terms of 6 units, when we know there's need at all of these levels. And so to me, it's, this one is meeting a need, this one is meeting a need. There's a 6 unit difference, but if that's a big difference in terms of making it feasible or not, that seems like useful information.
Okay. Yeah, no, that seems like it'll all be helpful, and more data drive future policy decisions. I guess that also makes me think too about the placing minimums and maximums, or at least the maximums. Does that have an impact on what actually built? I don't know if that's helpful for you to throw into the hopper.
Yeah, so, and I will add one more thing if I can. So I think we should make sure that all the options are things that we want and that meet the Central Issaquah vision. But that said, if we do give options, then we get that additional information about what developers choose within those options.
Councilmember DiMichele.
Thank you. I just wanted to add that I think Councilmember Martz and I were both surprised to find out when we, in our committee, that if we included an MFTE, that we were taking money away from the school district. And so I think that, and with all due respect to the school board member to be who I happen to know, and I'm sure he's knowledgeable, but I would really like to hear an official commentary from the school district and some analysis from them about what that might mean to them in terms of impact on their bottom line. And, you know, if we were ever to have a joint meeting with the school board, which might be a nice thing for our 2024 work program, I think this would be a great item for us to chew on together, because there are more moving parts. And as he pointed out, yes, the more students they have, the more income they get from the state of Washington. So there could be a very nuanced answer to that question, but I really would like to have an official response. Thanks.
Before I come back to you, Councilmember Joe, do you want to jump in, and then I'll start round 3.
Thank you. For fear of putting something else on our agenda, we do have the comp plan that we're going to be looking at next year for 2024 to 2044, and the county CPPs have given us some numbers that we need approximately 3,500 net new houses in Issaquah we need to plan for those houses by 2044. So as we look at this as one element of that planning, that's another reason why I would be in favor of us continuing to study this along the way, because the county has said 3,500 more units should be planned for. I think that we have an obligation to do our planning, and if this is a tool that can help us get those additional units along the entire spectrum of AMI, I think that we should at least take advantage of studying it some more. Thank you.
Round 3, Deputy Council President.
I just remembered the question I forgot. This is a spend decision for council, and I've noticed that the administration hasn't provided any recommendation on whether or not they think this is worthy of city dollars. So I would also expect at a certain point that the administration weighs in and says whether or not they think that this is an appropriate use of city funds given all our other needs, so on and so forth.
Round 3 is still open. Lots and lots of comments. Jen, from what you've heard, is there anything else that you need? Is there anything else you want to follow up on with the question of the council, or no?
No, I think these are all things that we've been struggling with as well. And so that's where a little bit of like, how do you do the pros and cons with this? It's like one isn't low because it's important still. And so there is a trade-off, but we think that as Councilmember had mentioned, that this will help give us some additional feedback from the market as a pilot towards the work we're going to be doing in the next year and a half, making those adjustments. And we did hear, one thing I didn't mention is we did hear at our EVC PPC meeting, different developers come and talk about how MFTE is important and how they like this. But, again, so it wasn't just one developer, but, right now that's the feedback we've received. So
thank you. I think if everybody's finished with this, then we'll move on, but I just wanted to check in and see if anybody would like a break. We have several more items, so 5-minute break. Okay, let's do it. We're gonna take a break. Hey, Chance, I think we're ready to go, but you're going to have to maybe turn off the on air and turn it back on so I know that you actually hear me. Okay, that's just kind of creepy. Okay, we're ready to come back in. So we are back from our break and continuing to work our way through our regular business agenda. We're at AB 8663, the 2024 City Council calendar. And the administration is looking for some direction. And City Clerk Tisha Geezer is going to make our presentation.
Good evening, City Council. This is Tisha Geezer, City Clerk, and I'm here to talk to you about your 2024 calendar. So we're not recommending action tonight, just your feedback on the schedule for next year. So as a reminder, last year was the first year we adopted an annual calendar. This was in response to the adoption of the cultural and religious holiday calendar pilot, which was approved in the fall of 2022 and went through this month, December 2023. And as part of the adoption of that calendar, the city committed to not scheduling public meetings on 15 holidays with significant work restrictions. This posed some operational challenges for the City Council and boards and commissions that have these standard meeting dates that occur at a prescribed day and time each month. And so to proactively prevent a lot of rescheduling throughout the year, we adopted a 2023 city calendar, which look forward to hearing any comments you may have later in the meeting, but certainly from the administration's perspective was much more efficient than having to pull council members consistently. It also helped our other 13 advisory boards and commissions plan as they are orbiting around the city council's meetings and schedule throughout the year. So the proposed calendar is a similar approach to last year. We looked at meetings that conflicted with the cultural and religious holidays with significant work restrictions. We also looked at a few other dates like election night, Valentine's Day, of course, any city hall closures, and we prioritized moving those meetings to Monday and Tuesdays later in the month, though occasionally you'll see a few Wednesday committee meetings if there were challenges with that approach. So just a few meetings of note, and again, this is very consistent with the 2023 schedule, but there are 3 Saturday retreats for the City Council that are proposed, listed on screen. There are 3 community listening sessions, really 2 community listening sessions, which with a farmers market touch point, and again, this mirrors the approach taken in 2023. There are some additional committee of the whole meetings scheduled for September and October to anticipate some additional time needed for the budget deliberations, as well as the standard city council break towards the end of August and December. So the cultural and religious holiday calendar that was approved in September 22 was a pilot program, and we are bringing the pilot program back to the Equity Board on Wednesday to talk about adoption of a permanent calendar. Along with that, we are proposing a few changes to that list of work-restricted holidays based on some feedback received from the Baha'i community, the Buddhist community, and the broader Christian community. And so there are some proposed changes, and certainly the Equity Board may be bringing other changes forward at that meeting. So what we baked into the City Council's calendar are the current the current work restricted dates, as well as the few changes we're recommending. However, if they provide some different direction when we bring this item back at your January 2nd meeting, we'll factor those adjustments in to, again, try and minimize rescheduling needed as we move into 2024. The cultural and religious holiday calendar will be going to the Equity Board this week and then over to the Services, Safety, and Parks Committee in January, and should be coming back to the full council in February. So it's a little bit behind our 2024 council schedule, but again, I think we can, close enough that we're able to make the scheduling adjustments that we anticipate being an issue. So real quick, this process sort of organically developed once the cultural and religious holiday calendar was approved. And now that it seems to be working well in a recurring aspect of your scheduling, we would like to formalize it in the municipal code and the city council rules. It's touched on, but we would like to establish that the dates that you adopt in adopting this calendar are setting your regular schedule for the year. And then we'd like to provide some default dates if a future council chooses not to go through this process that would come into play in the absence of an annual calendar. So it's really just baking it in and providing a little more clarity on what your regular meetings are versus your special meetings. And that's why we're recommending adopting this at the January 2nd meeting to give us time to prepare that accompanying legislation to make those adjustments. And so we are looking for your feedback tonight, and then we'll plan to bring back an ordinance and potentially 2 resolutions to, again, formalize not only this calendar, but this process of adopting an annual calendar at the January meeting. And are just looking for your input tonight, as well as when this item returns, if you would like it to go on the consent calendar or under regular business. Thank you.
Thank you, City Clerk. Does council have any questions? Deputy Council President?
One question for you, but just as much for the other council members as well, is the subject of listening sessions is likely to come up at our next retreat for an evaluation now that we've been trying it out for a few years. Probably need to discuss whether or not we think it's been successful, whether that needs to change. Do you think that it should stay in the calendar, and if something changes, we remove it, or should we remove it and then, depending on what our evaluation is of listening sessions, we add whatever's new back?
I would recommend, because there's so many factors tied up with those listening sessions, where they're held, which can dictate time of year. If there's a particular topical focus, like the budget or something else, probably I would recommend omitting them, and then we can always add them back in based on the guidance, but open to suggestions others have.
Okay, well we're in questions.
Councilmember Martz?
Yeah, I have a question. If we're going to adopt this on January 2nd, why is it going to Services and Safety and Parks after that?
So we have 2 calendar items, and it's a little bit confusing. The cultural and religious holiday calendar will be coming to Services, Safety, and Parks, and so that's looking at which dates the city is committing to not holding any kind of public meeting on. And that is running on a separate track from the city council's calendar. We need to start scheduling your city council meetings for the next year, so we're a few steps ahead of that calendar, but we've been keeping it in mind and trying to keep them aligned.
Okay, so for tonight, it's just the city council calendar for 2020. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Yeah, we're going to go to, there is no action requested tonight, but we would like to hear from all of you on the calendar. So let's start with Council President.
I guess I just want to start with a thank you. I've really, really, truly appreciated not only having the religious and cultural calendar and having that as something that we're leading on as a city, but also just having our meetings ahead of time. I literally have it up on my refrigerator so that my family knows when I'm going to be gone and all of that. So super helpful on that aspect. Regarding listening sessions, generally, I'm not in favor of the October 24th date, just because it is so close to an upcoming presidential election. And I just don't think that would behoove us. And additionally to that, I'd like to consider having a session in a warmer month, perhaps at a park or the park near City Hall, so that we could have something that's maybe a little bit more family friendly, which would allow families to come and attend and have their kids be able to be entertained while they could interact I'm seeing thumbs up in the audience. Thank you for that. But generally, I think utilizing a summer or warmer month so that we could do something would be more something that I think would work for us.
Thank you. I think it was Deputy Council President and then Councilmember Hunt.
I feel like Councilmember DiMichele and I were lucky because we came on, well, not lucky because of this, but we came on right before COVID. So our schedule has always been planned out and on our calendar, and we've always known when meetings are coming. So I don't know what it was like before that. Yeah, no, I think it looks good. I personally think we remove the listening sessions for now until we have that evaluation, though I do like the idea of having more fun in the sun.
Councilmember Hunt.
Thank you. Also appreciate the religious and cultural holiday calendar. I think that's been it's been a great addition to how we do our work and how the commissions do their work. On the listening session, that was the one thing that I wanted to flag because I think I would like to see us do a look at that, a comprehensive look. I think I like the way that Councilmember Hall framed it, that we should, think about what do we want to get out of it and start there, and then, how do we achieve that and do that better than the current way of doing that. And I think one likely outcome of that might be different timings or different, scheduling around different events. And so I think until we have that conversation, and it sounds like by the recommendation of the clerk as well, that sounds like it does make sense to remove those and then add them back once we have that conversation.
Great. Councilmember Joe?
Thank you. I just want to thank the administration and the clerk's office for putting this together. I know it's a little bit of whack-a-mole sometimes. I would like to just acknowledge and speak in favor of continuing to keep our committee meetings on those Tuesday dates. I think it's very helpful to have those as a set date unless there's a holiday on a Monday, such as Labor Day or New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, whatever it might be. The reason is that I've found that now Wednesdays and Thursdays are other community events, whether it's the Historical Society or the Old Town update on projects or whatever it might be. The community is able to schedule those events with a little more certainty, and we know going into each week that if it's going to be a 2 or a 3 or a 4 night commitment in a given week. So thank you for that, and I would really speak in favor of keeping that consistent whenever possible. But overall, I'm very pleased with the entire project, and look forward to seeing what comes out of the conversation. Thank you.
Councilmember Martz.
I just have a nit. I'm hoping that the retreat on Saturday, February 3rd, if there's any way we can have that be not particularly late in the day. That's the opening weekend of the Seattle Boat Show, which for some people is a secular holiday, and I already have commitments later in the afternoon on that day. Thank you.
Councilmember DiMichele.
Again, I'll plus one. I just am so proud of the fact that we are honoring religious and cultural holidays and have had such wonderful feedback from, colleagues in other cities who wish that they had this and want to know more about it. And we are so far ahead of them. And I think so responsive to our community by doing this. So thanks for all the work that goes into that. Plus one on reevaluating what we're doing on our listening sessions. And so I would also like to see those removed, and we'll put those back on as we can. And then just a personal whine, because I think I'm the only council member that's on 2 committees. And there have been times when they were back to back. So that's yeah. Oh, you too? Yes. All right. So anyway, there's more than one of us but that's just, I mean, it's endurable, but I just want to bring it up. So thanks.
That's great. I think we have heard from everybody. City Clerk, do we need direction on whether this comes back on consent or regular business? That's in my script, but I'm not thinking.
It sounds like it could return on consent.
Okay.
The feedback I heard was at this point just remove the listening sessions.
Okay. That's great. Well, thank you very much. We have a new business item this evening. It's ID 1546. It is a new business request, credit card processing fees cost recovery. And this evening, you'll be getting the preliminary staff response. At the October 23rd City Council meeting, Council President Walsh presented this new business request item. At that meeting, a majority of the council approved moving this item forward to the next stage in the process, the preliminary staff response. Chief Financial Officer Robert Hamoud is here to briefly was here.
I sent him home. It's starting to rain pretty hard. So.
Okay. Was here and has asked our city administrator to fill in. So I assume that you're.
And yeah, Robert's listening in the car as he's driving home.
Oh, there you go.
But Madam Mayor, members of the council, you have a memorandum from Mr. Mood and Jennifer Ryan, the Deputy Finance Director, reviewing our current processes for credit cards, and the administration's recommending that we would talk about this further during the first quarter at Services, Safety, and Parks. That's the administration's recommendations. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Does council have questions? Does not look like council has questions. Can I get a motion? Council President.
I move to request the administration add consideration of a credit card policy to the city's 2024 work plan and schedule it for an initial Services, Safety, and Parks Committee meeting in the first quarter of 2024.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That carries unanimously, 6-0. We're going to move on to our next item, which is committee and regional reports, and we'll start with Councilmember Joe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Currently, the Cascade Water Alliance Board meeting is scheduled for December 20th. There's a high likelihood that that will be canceled. The public affairs meeting for Cascade Water Alliance is Wednesday, 9 o'clock in the morning. You can consult the website if you'd like to attend. The December 11th contract briefing that was going to be conducted has been canceled, as I've heard, and they're moving it to the first week in January. And I'll give additional information to the mayor and the alternate for that date, but it is a little bit off right now. But you can clear your calendar for December 11th at this point. Thank you.
Councilmember DiMichele.
Thank you, Mayor Polly. I don't have any reports from previous meetings since most of them were canceled. But the Eastside Transportation Partnership will be meeting this Friday, December 8th. And Eastside Human Services Forum will have its last meeting of the year on December the 14th. And the Regional Transit Committee meeting for December has been canceled. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hunt.
Thank you. There were no items for the December meeting of the Planning Development Environment Committee. So there will be no December meeting, and that concludes my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Mertz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Sound Cities Association Public Issues Committee will be meeting on Wednesday, December 13th from 7 till 9 p.m. for an online meeting. Action will include election of a PIC chair and vice chair, regional board and committee appointments, and a discussion of the SCA legislative priorities, which I distributed to all of you after the last council meeting, which I'm going to bring up again in good of the order. The Council Services, Safety, and Parks Committee will be meeting Monday, December 11th at 6:30 p.m. here in Council Chambers. We have two items. ID 1505, Municipal Building Decarbonization Study Resolution, will be presented by Stacy Vin McKinstry. And ID 1557, Julius Bohm Pool Feasibility Study. Jeff Watling is going to be presenting on that exciting topic. And this concludes my report.
Thank you. Deputy Council President.
Thank you. Just to say that next Thursday at 4 p.m., Eastside Fire and Rescue Board of Directors will have its last board meeting of the year. We'll be adopting our legislative agenda for the next year, which I just bumped to the top of everyone's inboxes and would like to bring up briefly at good of the order also. And that concludes my report. I just wanted to check if mobility and infrastructure had anything since Councilmember Ray is not here.
Yes, I was going to mention too.
You got
I
it?
skipped Councilmember Ray. He does have an excused absence this evening. Council President.
Thank you. I have no report.
Thank you. For the mayor's report, there was no written report issued today. I'm just going to verbally give an update on an event that happened in Issaquah. So grateful to all of those who could attend the Moroccan earthquake relief event that was hosted by the city, the Washington Moroccan Association, and the Muslim Association of Puget Sound. Really well attended. The event was sold out. Don't have any final information on amount of donations, both in cash or in kind, but it was a very successful event and quite enjoyable, and got to meet some residents of Issaquah I haven't met before, so always fun to do that. There will be some updates on the relief projects as they go forward, but there is 3. There is one around fresh produce, one around computers, and this one around winter clothing. So I'll just include some of those in my future mayor's report. The next item of the business is good of the order, and I did hear from Deputy Council President and Councilmember Mertz that they both have items. So, Councilmember Mertz, do you want to go first? Oh, and Councilmember Michelle. Okay.
Councilmember Michelle, do you want to go first? All right. You want to back cleanup? All right. So there's a couple parts to the draft SCA state legislative agenda draft. There's a priorities, public safety, tools and resources to address auto theft and property crime, sustainable funding for core local services, to replace the 1% cap with a limit tied to inflation and population growth. This is, I would say, a perennial interest of SCA. Address the behavioral health treatment crisis by increasing the capacity of the crisis response system. Continue to invest in local infrastructure, transportation, and mobility, of course. Promote economic vitality by increasing support for community revitalization and workforce development programs. Allocate state and federal funding to cities to mitigate and prepare for impacts of climate change. Promote housing affordability by providing resources to assist cities with implementation of local affordable housing plans. And then separately, legislative principles, advance racial equity and social justice, improve the social safety net, honor commitments to shared resources, make no unfunded mandates of cities, that's also a perennial one, and preserve local decision-making authority, also perennial. So does anyone have any feedback or issues with any of those items that they'd like me to bring forward to pick at the... All right, thank you all for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Councilmember Mertz. Deputy Council President Hall?
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, so Eastside Fire and Rescues, I just bumped that up to, they're looking at, of course, continuing to advocate for PFAS funding for the cleanup and remediation partnership for the Issaquah PFAS partnership, wildland fire mitigation response. There's some more specifics under each title, so let me know if you have any particular questions or comments that we can pass along at the board meeting next week. EMS and the general healthcare system coordination, lithium-ion batteries, which pose a serious fire risk, the state fire marshal's office, and then also tax increment financing, TIF, which is a concern of fire district. Any concerns, either administration or?
Councilmember DiMichele.
I'll do a summary as well as of the Eastside Transportation Partnership legislative priorities. I think the biggest change is a much stronger statement supporting that the state of Washington provides stronger support for transit infrastructure. There's a strong statement urging the legislature to stay on schedule with Move Ahead Washington. And I think everything else in here aligns very well with our own legislative priorities. So, and is pretty much what we proposed last year. Because this is a short session, there won't be any major changes. So I think those are the two things. I think we all support the strong statement about Move Ahead Washington, and then much more emphasis on support for transit. And everything else is pretty much what it was before. So is there any objections or changes that you'd like to see to those? We'll be voting on this at ETP on Friday. Everybody okay? All right.
Sounds
Thanks.
like it. Any other items for good of the order before I move on to some upcoming meetings? Council President?
Realized I have something on there. First reminder is there's the employee recognition breakfast coming up on this Thursday. Please check to see if you had RSVP'd and make sure you have it on your calendar. Trying to remember what the other one was. Yeah, we had two things on the item there.
You want?
The legislative breakfast is on December 12th at 8 a.m. at Tibbetts Manor. So I want to make sure everybody has that on their calendars. Or if they are not able to make it, have let people know about it. And then finally, a reminder, HR sent us paperwork to fill out, digital paperwork, for our new benefits, and they have asked us to make sure that is complete by December 15th. I want to make sure that's on everybody's agenda. We like to make HR happy, especially when they're providing us with benefits and such. So those were my items. Thank you.
That's great. No other items. I will go through a couple of upcoming meetings. December 12th, there is a special city council meeting. It is the legislative breakfast, and it will be held at 8 a.m. at Tibbetts Creek Manor. There will not be a second regular city council meeting in December as part of our winter break. On January 2nd, the regular city council meeting has some anticipated agenda items, including the swearing-in ceremony and oaths of office for 3 of our council members, an election of a council president and deputy council president for the 2024 year. There is no executive session this evening, and if there is no additional business, we are adjourned at 9:49.